Hi you guys, and welcome back to another one of my tutorials. This is on a white nuthatch. You can see I'm taping down my Arches watercolor paper to my gator board using Scotch tape. And that roller I got from the paint area of the store. I use that to press the paper onto the gator board really good, and I press the tape onto the gator board really well too. That's the reference photo that I used. It's from the Paint My Photo website. And here you can see that I am applying burnt sienna with a 1-inch brush on the tree. This is working wet into wet. I came back with my number 4 round for detail work to paint around the bird's foot and the claws so I don't lose that part of the line drawing. It's somewhat tedious, but it goes fairly quick. And then when I get that part accomplished, I will switch over and use my number 4 round for detail and on the bark of the tree using Vandyke Brown. There you see wet on wet, Vandyke Brown being applied. And I apply that randomly using the photo as a reference. You don't want to use real straight lines, but this kind of bark does have a plate look to it, like it's squares, but there are some curves in it. And I'm still using the number 4 and coming back and applying some more paint to get that darker. I use a hair dryer in between, and once I got that dry, I took an old brush. It's a number 12 flat brush, and it's old. I've had it for like 30 years. And I like to use that for rough textures because I don't have to worry about it getting ruined. And there you can see I'm using that to apply darker burnt sienna to the tree bark. And I use kind of a scumbling motion, you can tell, so that that bark looks somewhat rough. And I go along and finish up with that. And then you'll see that I come back with the Vandyke Brown. And I darken the brown areas of the tree bark as well, those light brown areas. So there's the Vandyke Brown that I'm using to darken up those lighter areas. And I kind of sped the video along. It's all pretty much scumbling to apply that on. And just use kind of a ragged, jagged motion to get the look of the tree bark. And when I finish this round, I'll let it dry and come back with darker Vandyke Brown. That would be less water in your paintbrush and more of the paint. And you can see that I'm applying that jagged as well. I'm not covering that previous layer, but I'm kind of scumbling around it just to mimic the tree bark, that you can see the light and the dark brown. And so I went through all of that, and now I'm coming back with the burnt sienna, a darker burnt sienna, again more paint and less water, and kind of, for lack of a better term, highlighting parts of that bark so that it shows up. I wanted it dark to the left-hand side of the finished painting, so it kind of helps it pop off a little bit, but I didn't go over the previous, that's my bird in the background. I didn't go over all of the previous paint, as you can see. Now here I came in with my 3/4 inch flat with plain water, and I am quote-unquote painting the background with plain water. I'm just wetting the background because I'll be working wet on wet. So that's plain water. And I came in with my number 8 round. I'm scumbling in a mix of neutral tint and ultramarine. And I was showing you the picture so you could see my reference photo again and what I'm kind of aiming towards. It's my interpretation of the reference photo. I switched to Sap Green there. I wanted a little bit of green and some burnt sienna again, and that is in the tree, that's also in the bird, and it kind of ties the whole painting together when you use the same color repeated throughout in areas of a painting. It helps to tie the whole painting together and give it cohesiveness. And you can see here I blended into the green and the burnt sienna. I lost the wetness by the bird there, so I'm putting in some more clear water. And now I'm putting in another mix then of neutral tint and ultramarine. I switched over to my 2-0 round for the eye using just neutral tint, and I use that on the beak as well. And that is mostly paint, not a lot of water, but mostly paint. I left a lot of this part of the process in of painting this bird because if you don't get the eye right, there's no point in going on and finishing the rest of the picture. Whether it's this one or any other one, it's the eye that draws you in. So I left a lot of this in, even though it's tedious. It's very important to know how to do the eye. And now that I'm done with that, I'll switch over in just a minute here and I will start painting his beak. I wet the beak first with clear water and my brush because I want a soft transition. And there you can see I'm putting in a mix again of neutral tint and ultramarine. Those tiny brushes don't hold a lot of paint, so I do have to redip quite a bit. And there's the photo reference again, so you can tell exactly what I'm doing there. The bottom part of his bill is gray. Neutral tint is pretty much a black color, and so when you have more water in it, it does give you a gray color. But with the ultramarine blue, it makes it look like the sky is reflecting, and that's why I added it in. Now here you'll see that I had water on the bottom part of his bill, and I just kind of dragged down that black part to give it shadow. Here I'm back to my old number 12 flat brush to lift paint out using plain water. There's nothing on that brush except for water. And you use the same scumbling motion that you do to apply the paint for the bark, only now we're lifting out paint to create some highlights on the tree. And it makes a real pretty wood grain. Upside down U's work really well for that, for wood grain. Here I'm back to my number 00 brush for the head, and I'm using neutral tint and ultramarine, again, a mixture of that, to apply the black on the top of the head. Again, the ultramarine just helps it look like it is reflecting the sky. Here I'm wanting to define his head some more. Follow that line that I drew to get a real nice shape on his head. And there I am back with my number 20 00, making feather marks, because he wouldn't have a totally flat, smooth head like that. There would be some feather marks. And there I'm working at the back of the head. All the black on this bird was done using neutral tint and ultramarine, a mix of the two. I'm working on the left-hand side of the bird where he's black, and I'm making sure that those feather strokes go the direction of the feathers. To the left, the outside of the bird, the feathers kind of look like they're pointing down to me, but yet on the right-hand side of that shadow, it's like they're horizontal. So I put my main part of my black in the middle of that shape, and I worked my way outwards to the left with down strokes and to the right with more horizontal strokes. And you can see I'm putting in some more detail here at the end of this, or at the bottom. And now I'm back to my number 4 round, painting his wing. I felt like the Nuthatch would be an easy bird to explain to you how to paint, because really he is only the ultramarine, the neutral tint, with a little bit of that burnt sienna on the bottom. But other than that, it's just a mix of the two colors. So really you have to just worry about where you place those colors and how you use your brush and to get those finer strokes. And there you can see I'm darkening the wing and now getting more detail in up under the neck area. And I'll be darkening that whole area here. I'm following my line that I drew and applying more paint than water to get the nice dark value. And I'm finishing up with the tip of my brush, the bottom of the bird there. And now that we've finished up the dark, I took my number 2 round and I'm lifting paint out of there. And that helps to show that he does have a tail and that he does have a wing back there because he's so dark. But if you take plain water on your brush and you make the marks like you see me doing, it makes it look like shadow and light is hitting back there, and it gives you the sense of different wing feathers that are showing. It's kind of fun to do, and sometimes with black though you don't get the pickup that you'd like. So when you make that stroke with plain water and it doesn't work, then use the rag like you see me doing there, and it will help pick up that paint for you. That's why I'm using a nice clean cotton rag to lift that color out. Now here you see me back with my number 4, applying burnt sienna to the bottom of the bird. And they do have that color there. And I realize that he is shadowed in that area on the picture, but you still put the color in because your mind's eye will pick that up. We will be doing a wash over the bottom part of that bird. But for now, I took my number 4 and I went on to do shadows. This is mostly dry brushing, which is really hard on your brush, but you get a beautiful result. So I dry brush over the eye and the beak area. It gives the bird form and shadow. It sets in those white feathers. You don't want to leave that part of the paper completely blank. And it just makes it look like he has really thick feathers, and it leaves shadow. So there you can see I'm detailing the chest and in the shoulder area, or the belly area there. And it gives him form, that his head is turned and he's thinking about jumping away from that tree. And here with the number 4, that is wet on dry. Again, it's a mix of the ultramarine and the neutral tint. And I just went right over the burnt sienna. The burnt sienna was completely dry when I did that. I went right over it to get a nice shadow down there, as you see in the photo. And when I was done with that, see how my brush is splayed at the tip? It's because I'm dry brushing again. The letter V, those shapes work really well on the breast of birds where they have thousands of tiny little feathers. But if you make V shapes, if you look real close at a bird photo, it does look like little V's on them. And that helps to give a realistic look to your bird. And here I'm shadowing in his head and face to give that a little bit more form too. I came back with my number 2 round, and I'm putting in those little detail feathers on that bottom part of the black stripe. Didn't want to leave that flat either. So I put in some detail strokes there with my number 2. And that pretty much completes the bird itself. So I went on to his feet, and I'm using the 00020 for the feet. And again, it's a mix of ultramarine and neutral tint. And I carefully painted his feet, and I used more paint than water in the darker shadow areas. And I used basically just mostly paint when I did his toenails, because they're so tiny and they're black. So I used mostly paint for that. It's very tiny detailed work. Make sure you make the toenail, the base of it, where it connects to his toe, wider, so it's stuck on his foot. And there you see me putting shadow in on the bottom of the foot. So I wanted to show you how to do this foot, and I won't show you how to do the other one because you do it exactly the same way. And here you can see that I came in with the same brush and the 20 to fill in the tree with burnt sienna around his foot. I painted around his foot and his little toenails there and up above as well. Remember to always blend it out. And here I came back with my number 4, and I'm adding Vandyke Brown to the tree to create a shadow, because where he is on the tree, whether it's a sunny day or not, would create a little bit of a shadow and make the tree just a little bit darker where he is. And that helps to set him firmly in his surroundings. Now here you can see I just kind of went over the toes, which is not a big deal because you can always come back and you'll see that. We'll replace the toes that we lost and the toenails with the number 2 brush. But here I'm finishing up the shadow on the tree first. And then there you can see that I took my 00 brush and I came back and I put his toenails back in that I lost. And when I was done refining that, I went back over to the bark and I added, with Vandyke Brown, some bark detail, the finer lines that you see in the bark. And you want to pick real kind of random spots for that too, and yet sort of outline your colors that you have. You can see like I'm going around the brown. I kind of outline the burnt sienna as well. When you're done with this, you're done with your painting. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And thank you for watching.